Wildfires have been around in California for hundreds of years, yet we've never been able to adequately manage them. Just recently in October, there was a large-scale wildfire in Napa Valley. Now, imagine yourselves in the shoes of someone living in Napa Valley. You might be forced to evacuate your home. You've been forced to take out all your most of your belongings. And if you are a worker or an owner of a vineyard at Napa Valley, you've just been the victim of a $2 billion total industry loss due to the wildfires, as reported by Fox in October 2017. If you're living in Napa Valley, you are frustrated because there have been very little measures taken to prevent wildfires in California. Right now, so just on Sunday, when the fire started on Sunday night, it was only affected about 200 acres of land. However, by Monday morning, this wildfire has spread across 20,000 acres in California. Hundreds of people are forced to evacuate their homes due to these fires, according to Reuters in October 2017. This means that we need better systems to prevent wildfires, and this can be done through two ways: fuel reduction as well as increased funding. Moving to my first point, fuel reduction is one of the most important ways to reduce wildfires. According to The Hill in September 2017, scientific studies have shown that wildfires can be reduced through fuel reduction of unsustainable fuel sources. Right now, and although these projects have already started to be implemented, right now they are very slow and do not have much funding and have very few people working on them. However, this is where the Resilient Federal Forests Act of 2017 comes in, as reported by the Post in September 2017. This act will expedite these projects to prevent wildfires, it'll provide funding through multiple diverse investors, which will allow the U.S. Forest Services to hire more experts and have better resources in order to complete these projects. This will successfully be able to prevent wildfires from occurring, and will be integral to the safety of many across the nation and California. Right now, services are outdated and they cannot adapt to the climate changes that are going on in California. However, from the the Federal Forest Services Act of 2017, the U.S. Forest Services will be able to receive the funding and do these projects, which will adapt to climate change as well as droughts and successfully prevent wildfires from having extensive damage. My second point is just overall funding. Right now, according to The Hill in August 2017, Congress is setting spending caps on forest services funding. This means that the U.S. Forest Services are forced to take money and funding from their other various activities in order to spend that on wildfire prevention, which has frustrated them and ultimately leaves us more vulnerable to wildfire attacks. The Hill reports in August also that in 1995, the U.S. Forest Services had only about 1/6 of their total allocation of funds dedicated to wildfire prevention. However, just 20 years later, in 2014, that number has more than tripled, as over 1/2 of the funding has now gone to wildfire services. This means that Congress is not giving them adequate funding, and this is a large reason why wildfires are still an imminent threat to Americans across the United States. With increased funding, the U.S. Forest Services will be able to partake on its various projects, and this might include fuel reduction, or it can also include logging. So logging is when they take massive amount of trees across the United States and they log them. So they cut them down and use the wood for selling or any other as a resource. And without the trees, there's a lower chance of wildfires being spread. So even if a fire breaks out, it won't be able to extend across massive areas of land and affect millions of lives. This means that it is necessary for Congress to increase funding for the U.S. Forest Services, as they will be able to take the precautionary measures to lower the effects of wildfire services or of wildfires, or even prevent them from happening through fuel reduction. Finally, taking a step back, we see that wildfires are an imminent threat and they need to be prevented. The two ways we can do this are, of course, through fuel reduction as well as increased funding. Right now, there are millions of people every single year in California affected by wildfires, and there's almost no ways that the government is intervening to try to prevent this. And this is why we have wildfires like the one just a few days ago in Napa Valley. These wildfires have such extensive effects that they affect hundreds of lives who have to evacuate their homes, lose much of their belongings, and they just have to completely adapt to a different lifestyle. Imagine yourself as one of those people in Napa Valley. You have to leave your home, move to a completely different area. You have to leave your house, your friends, maybe even your family and your school, as if you're a child, and your job. Where you find this job. This is why preventing wildfires is so necessary, because millions of people are affected by them, and the only way we can do this is through fuel reduction and funding. Funding will help us create new projects like logging that will prevent the effects of wildfire, and fuel reduction will take out unsustainable fuel resources and replace them with renewable ones, which means that wildfires have a lesser chance of even starting due to pollutants in the air, and we'll be able to adapt to climate change. Ultimately, right now, wildfires are a huge threat. The one just last week was one of the biggest we've ever had in this state. And finally, the only way we can prevent this is through fuel reduction and increase funding, or else we will continue to have this threat and millions of lives will be affected in the future for years to come.